So Jamie and Nucleus, please, you guys take it over. And if you want me, Nucleus, you know everybody, so you can.
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you for the introduction, Lorenzo, and good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure tonight to co-moderate this forum with my sister Jamie. I did want to take a minute to introduce our panelists for this evening. To begin, I believe we have Bill Sauers here, president of the Florida Alliance for Retired Americans. We have Jeffrey Mitchell, who is the president of the South Florida AFL-CIO and also the Transport Workers Union, Local 291. And last but not least, we're joined by Curtis Hierro, who is the senior campaign lead. I hope I got that right, Curtis.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, brother. For the Communication Workers of America here in Florida. Literally some makers and shakers in the labor movement here tonight. And I just wanted to take a moment to pass it over to Jamie to get us underway with our first question.
All right, thank you very much, Nucleus, and thank you, gentlemen, for being with us tonight, and everybody for coming. This is going to be good. I believe that you guys will have 3 minutes each to answer the questions. The first one is a two-part question, and answer what you feel passionate about, but please try to adjust both at least a little bit. So I'll go ahead and start. These questions were submitted by a panel of our board and also people from outside the community. So here we go. The PRO Act, if enacted, will make sweeping changes to employee-employer relationships, negotiating and election practices, vendors and franchising systems, affecting hundreds of thousands of independent contractors as well. It's highly controversial and a high bar for candidates to lean into. Yet recently, the AFL-CIO put out a statement that if a candidate for national office will not support the PRO Act, then unions should not endorse the candidate. And we applaud you for being demanding. The question is, will you maintain that high standard in regards to support of drug price negotiations or Medicare expansion or voting rights expansion or ending fossil fuels and other legislative proposals that put people before corporate profits? And how will you hold candidates accountable if they change their positions after being endorsed or elected? I'd like to go ahead and start with Jeffrey.
Thank you. Well, of course, support for the PRO Act is more than just support for a bill. It's support for ending years of suppressing workers' right to organize and individuals' rights to organize. And it's been done through legislation. So the only way to undo that legislation is to create a seamless legislation that ties all the states together. Because you go to 50 different states, you'll have 50 different ways that they deal with organized labor. Here in Florida, if you're a corporation, you can get away with bloody murder. But if you're a labor organization, you got to give them your firstborn. You know what I mean? And reporting. This would just make it easier for labor to get its voice out. Right now, the deck is stacked against anyone that wants to organize because the odds are in big business's favor. What have you. It's just, a means of suppressing you. Now, with regards to, the other issues, every issue that you listed are issues that we can easily stand behind and say no to or yes to, and more favorably say yes to, because all of those are like kitchen table issues for us. Those are some of the things that we have been advocating for years to get behind. And for me, since you asked me that question, any politician that wants our backing must dance to our drum and our music. And if they want to go out and do their own thing, then we can't support them. You know, if we have an issue, whether it's 100% a labor issue or it's an environmental issue, or it's a social issue, that all ties us together. That's how labor gets involved with the communities, and we help each other, you know. And so, quite frankly, I'm one of those children that was brought up by a mom that was an activist. And so I learned through her to turn the other cheek when a friend that helped you is in need. And so whatever the issue is, if it's an issue for you, it's an issue for us all. Thank you.
All right, you just made it, Mr. Mitchell.
Well, go ahead, Curtis.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I would offer, so all of those issues that were mentioned, I think are things that are important for our labor movement to be engaged and actively fighting for. I personally believe that our labor movement needs to take the perspective of whole worker organizing. And what that means is, I think, you know, in the past we've seen, especially since the 70s onward, kind of a commitment to, all right, you know, the conversation labor movement, we focus on, you know, purely labor issues, don't want to talk about this other stuff. And I think we've seen that when that strategy has been adhered to, it's been an abject failure. And so I think it's important that we see our workers' lives don't just end on the shop floor. You know, things like the environment have a huge impact on our folks' lives. Things like police brutality have a huge impact on our folks' lives. Immigration, you name it. And it's why when we were screening candidates, we're asking, you know, do you stand with us on all these different issues? And I think that's an important question for anyone that we choose to support. To the second point, and something that I'm very passionate about is believing, and I think many in our union, is direct action gets the goods. And when we have an elected official who we support, and we ask our members to vote for, to knock doors for, and we have their commitment to listen to working people, and then they don't do so, it's important that they hear from us, and that more importantly than that, they see us and feel us, and know that we will not be a force on the sidelines, that just because, you know, they're a Democrat, they can count on our support. And I'll actually provide an example of this. In 2016, when she first ran for office, I believe, Stephanie Murphy was mentioned earlier. Our union endorsed her in that race. And when the PRO Act came up for a vote last year, she voted against it. And we had tried to meet with her multiple times, got nowhere. She voted against the bill, and we began a prolonged pressure campaign, which escalated to even doing a sustained picket outside of her office, which got local media attention and drew her anger. But we sent a very clear message that, you know, we're not going to support you since you voted against us. And working with the Central Florida AFL-CIO, we moved a no endorsement. And, you know, most of labor sat out her reelection bid. And this time around, I'm happy to report Congresswoman Murphy voted for the PRO Act because she saw that it was harder for her to win her reelection, and that if she plans to be a elected official in the future here in Florida.
Curtis, you have 10 more seconds.
Perfect. I'm wrapping up. That she will not be able to just think labor will fall in line, that she has to actually listen to working people's issues. And I think that's something that we want to carry on with any elected official, regardless of political party. You better be listening to us.
Thank you, Curtis. Bill.
Well, in response to the first question, and good evening, brothers and sisters. Absolutely. When we screen people, the first question is, are you for the protection and expansion of Social Security? And if the answer is anything but yes, then we advise them not to let the door hit them in the ass on the way out. So, you know, that's pretty much our stand. You know, we're not in it for anything other than that. And all those other issues all follow along with it because they all help support the income that Social Security and Medicare derives. So it makes the system go. You know, people making a livable wage as opposed to just a minimum wage. In regards to the PRO Act is a federal legislation, and a lot of the independent contractor language that some people are afraid of, that's a state situation. That's between each state and what they consider to be an employee-employer relationship. It has nothing to do with the PRO Act. The PRO Act is only impacting federal legislation. And we need to get the senators from Virginia and Arizona to understand that so that they sign on to it and then we can get it passed. Because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get employee-friendly employers to sign on to a letter supporting the PRO Act. Because you can have independent contractors and you can have them covered under a collective bargaining agreement and it will be successful. And we know this to be so because the company that I worked for actually is 100% organized, unionized, and there are independent contractors in our group. So, you know, the AFL has asked us if we would get businesses involved because we're, we are the PRO Act. We are what's possible with the PRO Act. And we have over 10,000 members in our national local. So, so that's all I would have to say on the subject. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We'll turn it over to Nucleus for the next question.
Cool. Thank you, Jimmy. And I believe there was a perfect transition. The next topic is foreign trade and jobs. So under Clinton, NAFTA was a disaster for American workers and created much job loss. Many of us on this call were very involved in trying to get NAFTA 2.0 passed back in 2018. But since the passage of the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement in 2018, wages have been affected, working conditions, and the ability to negotiate for workers both at home and abroad. Should labor support legislation to repeal or amend the Central American Free Trade Agreement or other foreign trade legislation that harms laborers and puts downward pressure on wages? And this is popcorn style. Any particular panel list, feel free to answer this question related to foreign trade and jobs.
I would like to start off. You know, under NAFTA, we lost nearly 700,000 jobs because of this implementation. And I'm all about jobs. I'm not totally against trade agreements, but I'm not for trade agreements that put us at a disadvantage. A lot of American companies took advantage of these trade agreements to move manufacturing jobs across the border. Then when they moved them across the border, they used them same very jobs to suppress the people that were working that are currently working in the jobs by saying that they'll move again. So I think that the best way to deal with these trade agreements is to deal with the people that make them. If they're not willing to make the necessary changes to them after they've seen what damage that they have done or could do to workers here in America, and in other respects to where they're going as well, then we need to deal with them people at election time. You know, perfect example is what Curtis used with Stephanie Murphy, you know, protesting outside the office. But more than that, just putting them on blast consistently. We have the ability to do that now through social media and different outlets that we didn't have back in the 90s. And we need to put the pressure on any individual who thinks that they can just take advantage of these. Many times they're part of the process of writing these laws. Get it out of their hands. Get it in. We need some working people that are in our legislature, and we need to put them there so that they can make sound decisions based on their life experiences. Many of these guys don't have the same life experiences as the people that are on this Zoom call. You know what I mean? Real world experience, and wondering how you're gonna put your kid in daycare, how you going to, you know, make ends meet. Those are the type of people that need to be making decisions, and those are the people that we need to get running. We need to get people from labor. We need to get seniors. You know, you don't have to retire because you're a senior. We'll bring you out of retirement if you're gonna be a good legislator. So I'm firmly, you know, skeptical going forward about labor agreements because so much attention has been brought to them that we'll have a lot more input going forward with these agreements, because NAFTA for America and the manufacturing sector almost killed cities like Detroit. You know, it just killed them. You know, and so
2 more seconds.
I'm good with that. I'll find a way to work it back in later.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, President Mitchell.
Just get
Mr. Hierro or Mr. Sauers, would you like to add anything on this current topic?
Sure. You know, I think one of the really great victories for our labor movement of the past decade has been our ability to even transcend our own members, but to get into the public real attitudes, even across the left and right, opposing bad trade deals. I think if you look at a pillar, you know, we always talk about when there's a term, it's kind of a loaded term, I'm going to try to describe it, called neoliberalism. Basically, it was an economic order coming out of the 1970s. And it gets people confused because it has the word liberal in it. But really, it's about creating an economic system where companies can go into developing nations, extract resources more easily, and in the United States and wealthy nations like the US better be able to export our jobs overseas. And so what it is, it's a losing deal for our sisters and brothers in the developing world, and it's a losing deal for our sisters and brothers here in our US labor movement. And I think one of the great successes is that we've been able to educate our working folks in our labor movement and public pressure outside of that to oppose things like NAFTA and TPP, which was a huge fight for many of us a couple of years back. And I do think we have to stay vigilant. Many of those folks who have that misguided economic belief, they still want to pursue these things. Many of them still have power in the Republican Party, and even still some in the Democratic Party as well. And so I think it needs to continue to be, we need to stay vigilant in opposing these trade deals, because it's also important that we stay linked with our sisters or brothers abroad, right? So for example, in CWA, we maintain contact with like Filipino call center workers who have been organizing, because we understand, you know, that's a place where we've seen a lot of our call center jobs going. It's important that we support their labor movement there so that when they raise standards, they're less easily exploited. And therefore, it's less likely our jobs are going there to you know, for them to be exploited. And so I think that, you know, it's not always the sexiest thing to talk about and to explain to our members and to community folks what these trade deals are, but I do think it's crucial that we continue to stay vigilant. And I think one of our great successes has been, you know, turning folks against these bad deals.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Curtis. Much appreciated. Bill, did you have anything to add on this particular subject related to foreign trade and jobs?
Well, I would say that one of the things that COVID has exposed is the fact that we are now suffering a national defense situation because we can't produce what we need for our military. And, you know, I was able to speak with the Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, about these things. And we have a very labor-friendly administration, maybe the most friendliest labor administration in the history of administrations. And they want to increase our manufacturing to, from where it is now, I think it's at 35% of what we manufacture the things we need, up to 75% is where they want to take it. And those would be union jobs. So one of the things we need to do is to support the current administration and some of the ideas that they're trying to promote because it involves promoting labor movement and involves, you know, $15 an hour or better. So we need to take advantage of the fact that we have this friendly administration, and we need to keep the momentum that has been building through 2018 into 2020. Thank you, Georgia. And Florida needs to be the engine that makes it all happen in 2022. If we knock off the governor and the US Senator, then it's going to be a big deal. And that's a responsibility that all of us have going into this next year. So, so relax while you can, because pretty soon it's going to get intense.
Right. Well, thank you for that, you all. I am going to pass it over to Jamie to ask the next question for tonight.
That would have been a great segue to the next question. However, I want to back up for just a second. I'm curious to know if there were any improvements. Since we didn't get NAFTA 2.0, we got the USMCA instead. Did that improve conditions or negotiating power at all for American workers or abroad?
No, it just gave it a name that nobody could pronounce clearly. That's all it did. It's the same old thing. You know what I mean?
Okay, so yeah, got you. SOS. All right. Well, then I will take Bill's cue towards the next one where relax while you can, because we would like to know, if you have not started yet, when will you start organizing with member surveys and precinct leader recruitment, grassroots organizations, and the local parties to get people engaged in the midterm elections and form public opinion? It's also been suggested, and after hearing you tonight, I'm a little more convinced, it's been suggested that comparing the effects of Trump's policies on labor unions to Biden's policies would be a persuasive tool to use in ads, online, and in publications. Do you agree? So we'd like to know when and what you're going to do on a kind of a timeline, and if you think the idea of making the comparison to Trump is a good idea.
Curtis, I'll let you go this time first.
Whoever wants to start, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, the 2022 elections is just, you know, from the moment the 2020 elections ended, we didn't stop. You know, it was just preparing. You know, we've been doing political education with our members ongoing throughout the year and so political education, that means about the context, the political context we're in, the legislation we've been fighting for, things like the PRO Act, and making clear, seeding the ground, making clear that people like Marco Rubio, with his failure to support the PRO Act, and people like Ron DeSantis, who was an active supporter of a bill that would have decimated our public sector, which for us would have hit 3,000 of our own members. And I know many other folks on here, many more, right? We've been making very clear for our members to understand that those elected officials, whether Governor DeSantis, Senator Marco Rubio, or you know, some of the congressional reps that we want to target, they are not on our side on our issues, right? And so I think we've already been doing that this year. Heading into 2022, we are looking at a very aggressive, now that the pandemic hopefully is starting to subside a bit, we want to get back to really a strong member program where talking to folks at work sites, which, like I said, we're already starting to do, door knocking. I think you're going to see an all above, all on board approach. And I think many of our sisters and brothers on here in labor are looking at the same thing, because I think, you know, we have to make it clear, if Ron DeSantis is reelected governor of Florida, it's going to be very hard for us to fight off the anti-public sector legislation for another 4 years, right? Just chances are it's going to make a deal and they're going to find a way to pass that. We have our public sector workers on the chopping block. When it comes to Marco Rubio, it's, do we want another 6 years of an elected official who is so shallow, such an empty suit, he will not even meet with us, right? And we could have Republican members go to him and he will not meet with us. We won't even get a meeting with staff. And so, you know, we say this every time, but it truly is life or death for our labor movement here in Florida. And so it's going to be an all above, all on board approach in mobilizing members and mobilizing community to win these elections.
Thank you, Curtis.
Well, I kind of, say ditto to that. From the time that the elections was over, and in some places we were actually licking our wounds, because although COVID was here, some of us didn't adjust to COVID. And, at my household, I received publications from everybody for whatever reason, every walk of life, every persuasion in the political spirit. And we have to still do what we've always done, which is get out and meet people. There's a way of safely canvassing neighborhoods. We've learned that. I used to come home and there would be cards and stuff from candidates in Ziploc bags with masks in them. Said stay safe. You know what I mean? But it was just a way of getting their message out and making you feel good, like they cared about you. Now, on to who we have now, DeSantis. We have to do everything in our power to make sure this guy does not make it back as governor of Florida first, because right now he's looking at the White House as well down the line, because this guy doesn't care about public safety. He only cares about his optics, and it's for a narrow few. When you get elected to a state office, whether it's senator or the governor, you're elected for the entire state of Florida. And so it would be to your benefit to move to the middle and listen to both sides. But this guy has not done that. He doesn't care. All right, kitchen table goods, they don't care about that. So we have to continue and utilize every tool that we have to get these people out of office. These people don't care about Florida. You got politicians that live in Florida care more about the Beltway than they do the citizens of Florida. And that's what you got to keep in the back of your mind. And we have to continue to do what we've always done, is what scares them. Get in the communities, all right? Even though we have COVID, we got to help out on that front as well and give our message to these people that, the only way that you're going to heal is to get somebody that cares about you healing, and continue to spread our message, and continue to organize good people into the movement, no matter where they come from.
I'm going to tell you, you guys have been doing pretty good.
I don't think they're new at this.
Only time if you hear me say you have so many seconds. So, okay.
Bill, did you want to weigh in on this?
I want to make a motion before you speak. I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to make a motion that Janice Coakley be the timekeeper of the next debate. She is awesome. She don't take shit from nobody.
Go ahead, Bill. Did you want to make a statement?
I would say, from the retiree perspective, COVID has changed a lot of things for us as far as how we're going to be able to get information out. When I was traveling around the state, and we would have people attend our meetings and they would do a sign-in sheet, 20% of the people didn't have email addresses because they didn't use email. Now because of COVID, they all have smartphones, they all know how to do Zoom, and it's a lot easier for us to get information out to the retirees all across the state utilizing Zoom. So we're looking to build our Zoom network statewide so that we can make sure everybody has the right information to make good decisions when it comes to their own political well-being. And as far as what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, it's going to be unfolding in front of us. We've already got committee meetings ready to start happening in Tallahassee. So, right now. So we've got political stuff that's happening right now in the state. And then we're going to have all this other stuff that's going to all be building up to November. It's going to take a lot of commitment and responsibility, and a lot of people doing everything they can. But you can't be 100% committed some of the time. And if we can get everybody on board with this, and we can get the blue areas of the state bluer, then I believe we can make up that 0.5% that we usually lose by and gain a 0.5% and win. But it's really going to take a focused effort on everybody's part. And, you know, I can only tell you for my responsibility, which is the retirees within the labor movement, we intend to be ready and have our people show up in force in overwhelming numbers.
Great, thank you. I'm feeling much more encouraged than before I asked the question. So we really do appreciate that. So Nucleus, you want to go on with the next one?
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I'm trying to figure out a way to reword it because the panelists pretty much discussed the next question. The next question has to deal with how have you combated communication problems we all face as a result of the pandemic? Creative solutions, success and failures that you can share. I guess I'll just narrowly focus the question a bit more. Specifically, Jeff and Curtis with CWA and TWU, how has your union interfaced with getting information out in light of the Delta variant being more impactful than the previous COVID strand that we were dealing with? And then Bill, combating the communication problem as it relates to retirees, if there is any technical barriers that may exist for getting our retirees to push a program that will require like a skill set. Have you confronted that? And like, how has the organization dealt with that? So that's how I kind of want to phrase the question. But I guess we can go in not in no particular order, but just to reiterate the question again, how has your union specifically dealt with getting information out there in light of the pandemic? And then Bill, how has there been any challenges to our aging population who want to be, you know, politically active and do the electoral work in light of COVID? So anyone who wants to answer, please feel free to chime in. I would love to hear how your union is thinking about this as we approach, you know, the municipal elections, the ending of this year, the Senate and governors next year, and then ultimately the White House in 24.
That's right.
Well, go ahead. You want to go, Curtis? But you know, I'm going to speak specifically with the transport workers first. We actually started to build out a complete social network on all platforms so that we can get our message out. We hired a local PR firm to help us strengthen our message and get it out to the various outlets. I was very, very intrigued to see how they went about it. It is a big difference in watching a professional handle your business and get, you know, mass responses to it, you know, from the news media. I did a tweet and they echoed it 7 million times throughout the country. And so it was impressive to me. So we're doing that. We're building better lists that we have internally so that, you know, when we send out a message, it's just not going out to the stratosphere, it's going out to people's hands. We built out an app exclusively for them so that when we send them a message, it's going to their phones, because we know everybody has a phone. All right. So that and if you don't want to believe that, just go to your local break room and see what they're doing on their free time. All right. So and it's been tremendously successful, and it stomps out all of the negative stuff that they see that isn't true, because they tend to believe people that they see on a daily basis and hear from on a daily basis. And so we're gonna duplicate that, and we're in the process of doing that with the CLC. We just have to get Crunk back up beyond this Delta variant and do what we have to do, you know, and getting that message out. You know, right now we're actually borrowing Nucleus to do our Zoom meetings every month. So until we get somebody in that spot, and we're in the process of doing that. But with that, we got to hire people with those skills that can do just that, and keep your message in front of your people so that they don't get distracted by some of the things that they see on TV.
Before we continue, Tony White just entered the call, and I would like to include him in the panel. Brother Tony White is the Vice President of the United Teachers of Date, a superb, top of the line labor guy. So please include him on the questions.
Okay. Welcome to the forum, my brother. So I just wanted to reiterate the question before we went to Curtis and Bill.
Tony.
Go ahead, Janice. I think I hear you talking.
Mr. Mitchell was finished, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, because Mr. Lorenzo was messing up my time. Okay, thank you.
I was trying to beat the clock.
You see, Jeff, she blames me all the time.
Hey, football. I know how to look at the time clock.
So Tony, the current question that's being discussed is relating to how your union is dealing with getting the message out as it relates to electoral cycles, whether the municipalities, the governor, you have it, in light of the pandemic. So we've seen in South Carolina, Republicans were in full hazmat suits knocking on folks' doors. So we just want to get a sense of how your union is thinking about getting the message out there. So that's the current discussion, but I did want to take a minute to just redirect the question to either Bill or Curtis. Either of the two, please feel free to chime in.
I'll be quick. You know, I think obviously this presented a huge challenge in our political organizing, because so much of what we do is that relationship building face to face, and the ability to struggle and agitate face to face, and it's just not the same on the phones. Initially, we did a massive, during the election season, push with phone banking, text banking. I think, obviously coming out of this, there's still issues with reaching some of our workforce, specifically our call center workers, many of whom are still working at home. We've devised ideas and plans around doing things like house meetings to be able to reach those folks, since they won't be at a centralized workspace. I saw my sister Jerica from our union who's on here. She's a call center worker. They've done a really innovative thing where, as the call center workers that are working from home go on break, the local has an ongoing Zoom where you could pop into the digital break room and folks can, get updates, ask questions of their steward. We could ask people to sign up for our political action fund. And so, it's not ideal, obviously, as that face-to-face, but, some of the tools that we've come up with to try to maintain that engagement, obviously looking toward everything hopefully going back to normal by next year.
Thank you, Curtis. Bill?
Well, as I said, for as devastating and terrible as COVID has been for the Alliance Retired Americans, it's been a good thing that we had adopted the technology of the 21st century, and we're able to keep our people safe from COVID because we can gather without having to be with one another. We don't have to have seniors on the roads at night or anything like that. And we're able to get different politicians or elected officials that we want to hear from on a Zoom call pretty easily. So we have a wonderful executive director. Her name is Jordan Cantor, and she's able to set up all these different meetings. And, you know, last year we were part of a lawsuit against the state as far as voting rights were concerned and mail-in voting, and they settled with us, and we got a lot of what we wanted. And then we had forums from all over the state where we had different supervisors of elections on, so that everybody knew what the rules were. Everybody was clear on what the rules are. So, you know, we're going to be able to educate our members so that they know what to do and how to do it. And, you know, that we wouldn't have had this opportunity prior to COVID because, like I said, 20% of them didn't even have an email address. But now we're able to build this, and if we do it correctly, then we're going to have a big impact on 2022. I think we had a big impact on 2020 myself, because we had a lot of people who were voting by mail, and we are again involved in a lawsuit against the state for voting rights. So, you know, I don't know what'll happen this time around, but we, you know, we're looking to make sure that our people can vote and they can do it safely. And we'll make sure that they have the information that they need so that they can make an intelligent decision on how to vote. And most of our attention this year has been on getting Medicare the authority to negotiate prescription drug prices. So that has been our push for this year, and we will continue to try to get that done while we have an administration who's in favor of it as well. Thanks.
Thank you, President Sauers. Brother White, do you have anything that you'll be able to offer on this particular discussion as it relates to United Teachers of Date, orientation to the issues for elections and how that's being communicated to rank and file in light of the COVID pandemic?
Absolutely, sir. Let me first of all apologize for coming on late. I realize that this is a very important forum. Madam President couldn't make it tonight. I'm just arriving home, but it was important enough for me to jump on once I arrived. When it comes to our communication methods, we use a multi-pronged attack. You know, we have size presents a problem in itself when it comes to communicating to 27,000 people that fall under the UTD umbrella. But we run a multitude of things. We run the hustle system where we have constant contact there. We run a weekly newsletter there. And one thing that we did in the last couple of years is we began to engage more so our Republican members. You know, we just came to the conclusion that you can no longer ignore those people and expect them to vote their interests simply because they were educators, because it just wasn't happening. Most of you know about 30 to 35% of our membership is Republican. So we started what we referred to as a GREAT program, where we would bring in and train our Republican members to literally speak with Republican legislatures. And it's been somewhat successful. Last year, it worked fairly well for us. As most of you know, as Democrats, we didn't do what the Republicans did last election. Our greatest asset has always been boots in the ground. But we paid attention to COVID. We paid attention to the protocols. We didn't put a lot of boots on the ground. We didn't knock on a lot of doors. We tried a lot of other things. But while we were doing that, the other side was actually ignoring COVID and knocking on doors. And I don't have to tell most of you on this. We took a whooping like no other last election cycle. But we learned some things as well. At the end of the cycle, we learned that, you know, you cannot attack most of the issues that working families face alone. We can't stay isolated in our own silos and only deal with issues of education. We had to get involved in some other issues from some other organizations, because that's the only way you have a symbiotic relationship, where they came to the table at the end of the legislative session last year when we were all included in this union busting bill. Although the bill started just simply attacking educators, excluding police and fire, It got to the point where they included everybody in the bill, and we saw support come from many different areas. We kind of broke out of the COVID pandemic situation at the end of the session, where we actually began making trips to Tallahassee. My first flight in over a year and a half was to the legislative session, because obviously most of you know, they made it very difficult for us to have FaceTime or to get our messages across, because they made us fly all the way to Tallahassee just to sit in a room at the Civic Center and Zoom into these meetings. And we fought that kind of internally for a while until we realized that, hey, if that's the system, that's the system. We got to play by the rules that are being played. We know they opened the session, they opened the legislature up right after the session ended. But this year, we're taking a little different approach, but we're still incorporating all of our other things we were doing as far as communicating with the social media, with the hustles, with the Twitter accounts, and things of that.
A couple of extra minutes, but your time is up.
Well, let me wrap it up, Sister Coakley, because I know you're real firm about that. But this year we did a lot of face-to-face at home. We began to meet with legislators much earlier this year. We also hired a Republican operative, so to speak, to try to secure some of these meetings and rebuild some of the relationships that we somewhat severed in the past. You know, people can't keep kicking you and expect you to be nice. But the truth of the matter is, these are long-term relationships, and we need to try to redevelop this as we move forward for the benefit of all of us in the labor community. And I'll end it at that, Sister Coakley. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Brother White. And thank you, Janice. You are like the best timekeeper. With that, I did want to just pass it over to Jamie to ask our next question to the panelists.
Okay.
Jamie?
This question originally came in very pointed, and I was advised to kind of water it down, which I did not. I kind of made it more pointed so that we would not be confused about what we're asking. So the threat of violence to upend our country's democracy and its institutions is real. Many anticipate a time when the lines will be drawn and a choice is deemed inevitable. Does organized labor see itself or has thought about its position in the front lines of our civil defense, or the defense of our democracy and our families and our future, if the violence comes to fruition? I know it's a tough question, but it has to have passed everybody's mind, so I really wanted to include it and make sure we all understood. If anybody wants to field that first, I would appreciate it.
Well, I like to say, that, Dr. King died in the ultimate act of violence. He was in town fighting for the right of ordinary workers, the sanitation workers. So to say that, absolutely, we're willing to fight for what's right. Now, what happened here on January 6th, as a former serviceman myself, I find it appalling. It was disgusting. It was disgraceful. And it divided America even more. I grew up in North Florida, just northwest Jacksonville, Florida, a small town called Callahan, Florida. I could tell you, super red, one-track mind, but there is hope. I got a phone call from one of my friends yesterday who's been pushing back. He come out and say, Jeff, I just took my whole family. We just got vaccinated. They're dropping like flies here. We got to change gears. We used to not fight like this over political issues. We used to stand together because we were Americans. He said, and I want to get back to that. That's the way I feel as a union representative and a labor representative in general. We absolutely have to, protect society. If it means standing in line and doing what we have to. We've done that before. Hell, we've been pepper sprayed. We've been water cannon in this lifetime. Not in the 60s. We're talking in the 2000s here in Miami-Dade County. All right. So absolutely, we're willing to, uphold our freedoms the same way everybody else claim they want to uphold our freedoms. But in return, they're trying to restrict some. But we are here with anyone that's willing to stand up for what's right. That makes America whole.
Thank you for that. Does anybody want to add anything?
Sure. That question you asked is a very real question. Most of you might know a couple months ago, I came on here talking about having people come and support us at school board meetings. For the last 4 to 5 months, our school board meetings have been very contentious on the outside, not necessarily on the inside, but on the outside. Republicans have sent a group of paid, I don't know what you want to call them, mercenaries, so to speak, to the school board to reboot masks and vaccinations. But by the same token, they also showed up with members from the Proud Boys. As a matter of fact, our last school board meeting was attended by Hierro, who 3 days after that was sentenced to 6 months in jail. So they will come out and agitate our teachers and our parents who were peacefully protesting. And what we basically did is utilize those boots in the ground I talked about earlier. We're large in numbers. So we would bring 30, 40, 50 people to the meeting and basically to build a wall or a shield around. Now, what's really scary about this, though, is we wasn't getting a lot of help from the local police. I mean, there was plenty of them standing around, but they were not stopping the altercations when people were being verbally abused and chest bumped and things of that nature. But hopefully that'll get better. But we don't have a choice, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, if we don't realize what happened in January 6th was a real tipping point of our country, and if we don't do anything and nothing comes of that, we're in a much worse situation than any of us could ever imagine. Am I in time, Coakley?
No, you did good, Tony. Thank you.
You
Constitution.
did good. You did very well.
The Constitution is the law of the land, and if anybody violates the Constitution, then they suffer the wrath of the law.
I mean, I see a whole hierarchy of, command chain, but that's my brain going. I really appreciate your candor, gentlemen. It's not an easy question to address, even though we probably have all addressed it, internally. I don't know if it's been an excellent. Oh, I'm sorry, Curtis, you didn't get a chance to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit. I think what we're seeing is like the last gasps of the right wings, I think, hold of power, of the rampant white supremacy coming home to roost in the Republican Party. I really encourage folks to look up the Southern Strategy as designed by Lee Atwater. This is an intentional wedge issues they've been driving in politics to turn white working class folks against their Black sisters and brothers, and fear of immigrants. And all of that has been molded into where we stand in 2021. And I think that's going to, unfortunately, we may see a continuing rise from those extremist ends. But what it's about is trying to terrorize a new majority of progressives, folks of all walks of life. You see the power of things like the Black vote in Georgia. And I think what's important for us is to be able to counter that with mass participation in the political process. Because what they're trying to do is undercut the traditional levers of power. So we can't assume anymore that even if we win an election fair and square, that, it's going to be seen to the end. They're actively trying to undercut faith in democracy. And so what that means for us is we have to respond by making sure our people are organized. And that means not just going to vote, but protecting the vote, right? And using the type of nonviolent direct action we saw in places like Philadelphia, Michigan, where folks were peacefully saying, hey, we need to count these votes. I do think that needs to be a part of our organizing moving forward when we do have this new radical fringe that I think is going to continue to try to contest our election process and even use things like terror to undercut it. The only way to respond is with what Dr. King talked about, and that is the setting of the beloved community and modeling that with our people, actively organized and being watchful of our right to vote.
Thank you. Nucleus?
Okay, perfect. So I guess that leads us to the next question. How does Labor plan to combat the misinformation and anti-union rhetoric that is so pervasive on social media and Spanish radio? And this question is directed to all panelists. So whoever would like to answer this first, please feel free to take a stab at it.
Well, first and foremost, I was always taught to fight fire with fire. But what we do and what we're going to do continually going forward is to, go on those same radio stations. That's why, my local, we hired a PR firm to get us access on those stations. And we have friends that work for some of those stations. So when adversaries come on, that they're able to call us on and advise notice and get on and combat it. We take out ads on some of those stations because they have to pay for themselves. You know what I mean? So the social media, you have to join them. You have to put out information to combat the information nowadays because it's so crazy. We have people within our own ranks that are on the other side for whatever reason, helping spread that message because they don't know any better. We have to educate them. We have to pull them aside and say, hey, this is what this is about. This is why we support that message with that group over there, because overall, if you hurt them, they're going to hurt us. You heard Tony talk earlier about how, everybody was standing on the sidelines until it was about them too, with the public employee unions. We can't wait and stand on the sidelines. We got to be there from day one with each other, and we got to share information from group to group and meet them right where they wage their war at, and let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and
I'll pick it up from there, Mr. Shelton. One of the things that Jeffrey said was vitally important. We also have a PR firm that works for us, and we've learned that the majority of our non-members, about 65% of our potential members are of Cuban descent. So we make a wave on Cuban radio, Cuban TV. One of the reasons the Madam President is not here tonight, because she had an interview on Cuban TV. You have to go where you normally don't go. We cannot afford to do what the Democratic Party did last election cycle, which is leave this disinformation unchecked. We have to be in the business of checking disinformation anytime and any way we can. And it's the only way that we're going to turn things around and get some of these legislators in our direction. We've been taking a beating, people, for a long time because, we don't stick to message. The other side, right or wrong, when they develop a message, they ride that message to the end. And a lot of times we flip-flop. We have to get to the point where we learn from those who have been kicking us. We have to learn to get a unified message and stick to that message and drive that message home. One of our biggest mistakes, in my estimation, from the last election cycle is we didn't check the communism or the socialism that was being tossed around with all of our candidates. We allowed them to continue to say that over and over and over again without checking them. And we got to start getting in the business of being uncomfortable, because sometimes we have to check those things that we know are far off from us.
Much appreciated. Thank you for sharing those sentiments, brother. President Sauers, is there anything you'd like to add from the retiree perspective on this issue?
Well, I agree that if somebody states a inaccuracy, that it would be beholden to educated people to point that out so that people understand how it actually works or what the truth is. So I think that's part of our responsibility to speak the truth. And that comes from whether that misinformation is from people who don't support us or from some people who do support us. Because sometimes there's people telling you stuff that isn't true on our side because I'm going to assume that they just don't know any better. But you know, there's a lot of misunderstandings about how Social Security works, or how does it impact the budgets and things like that. So we have to speak the truth. And as long as we speak the truth, then it shall set us free.
Very deep. Thank you. I did just want to take a minute just to acknowledge the hands that were raised. We just wanted to, you know, get through the questions in a timely manner, but we also did want to acknowledge the hands that were raised. They were 2 hands. Can you please keep it brief? We have a number of questions we have to get through, and we're not trying to keep folks here too long. I believe I saw Evan, you raised your hand. I see Carol, and I also see Carolina, but I know Carolina and Carol had their hand up first. I'm not too sure who had it up
Carolina had hers up first.
Okay, go ahead, Carolina.
Thank you. I was just commenting about the function of labor when it comes to education. And it is extremely important that it's something that we continuously do. We train our workers, make sure that they are able to demand what is right for them, to pay attention and to really know what their rights are. Well, it's also our responsibility to educate our members and also the members' families and our community so that we can identify all of these things that are wrong and call people that can help us solve those things. So misinformation is one of those, but it's also, you know, the spreading of anger and feeding on the ignorance of people really is another one. And we need to make sure that we are educating our members and educating the community so that they can identify those things, make sure that they are reaching out, and that we have also the tools in place to be able to respond as quickly as possible with these kinds of things. We're not joking around. We cannot tolerate that our members even have these kinds of ideas, and we need to intervene as quickly as possible to try to stop that.
Thank you. So that was just a statement, right? Okay. So remember, the next 2 come on. If you have a statement, you can't have a question. It's a question or a statement, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
Nucleus, who was the next?
I believe Carolyn. I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, hi, thank you. This has been a really good Zoom meeting. I just want to inform the people that are here of something they may not know that just came to my attention through our Democratic Club. When you go to register for the Department of Motor Vehicles and you want to change your registration or register as a new person coming into town, any changes, and they ask you, because you can register to vote there. You can register to vote at the same time. And they ask you, do you want to register to vote? You say yes, they press the button. They never ask you what party affiliation. You have to tell them, and people don't know that. So then in your mail comes a voter registration card that says independent. And these people don't know it. Sometimes, you just put it right away. You don't think anything of it. And there's big things that happen if you voted independent and you want to be a Democrat. You can't vote primaries. There's all kinds. I'm trying to talk to Representative Gottlieb about it. I'm going to talk to our supervisor of elections about it, just to see why this is happening. Because they press a button, send it to Van, and thank you very much, and it comes out as independent. I just wanted you to be aware of that. I think it's really bad because we've had so many new people coming into our state, and our area particularly. Thank you very much, and thank you for the information tonight.
No, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you.
If I can interrupt for just a second, since we have such a esteemed panel here with us tonight, I'd like to limit it to questions that the panel can answer, since we might not get them back for we don't know how long. And I did see a couple questions. Scott, did you want to ask a question? I'm sorry to butt in, Nucleus, but I thought this would be better use of our time.
Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy. No problem.
Okay.
Scott.
All right, thank you. Good point, Carolina, about education. Thank you, union leaders, for joining us and giving us your time. I remember my dad singing Pete Seeger union songs way back in the 40s and 50s, so I guess it kind of rubbed off on me. My question is, so Janice knows that I have a question, is what about unions pushing for election day off so these workers can get off and go out and vote? That seems like a really, I don't know, we get days off for Memorial Day and all these great Labor Day. We get all these days off, and to exercise our right to vote doesn't seem to be in the game plan. And even to have some motivation, like, and if you do vote, or if there's some way you could validate that, I'm a little naive in that aspect, that there's some little bonus perhaps. But I think that that would be a really big item, because people say, I don't have time to vote, I can't get out to vote, I work too many hours, I work 6 days. And with them limiting our access to vote, it seems more important than ever. Thank you, Jamie, for letting me jump that in.
I believe the PRO Act makes Election Day a holiday.
All right.
I believe.
Yes.
Has anybody advanced anything independent of the PRO Act about this?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, right now, currently, we have in our contract on election day, employees can take 2 hours off early to vote if they need to, which hasn't really come into play for us, because we've been pushing most of our members to vote early, vote by mail, and do things of that nature, because obviously we're winning that battle now. So there are some things you can do. You can try to institute these things into your contracts. If they don't make it a federal holiday, hopefully the PRO Act passes and we don't have to worry about instituting that inside our contracts. But that's one of the things that we have inside our contract right now that helps our members vote. And our members are voting roughly at about 83% right now. We don't know which way they're voting, but we do know they're voting around 83%.
Yes, we have similar language in our contract, and just like with UTD, we push our members to early vote and vote by mail, and it's been pretty successful with that. Actually, we vote at a higher clip than the general public does, and you know, kudos to that. But you know, as Bill said, you know, we passed the PRO Act, we'll get that. And the big answer to that question, you're not going to get any union that's not willing to push for another holiday.
Thank you. Janice, do we have time for one more question?
I believe we can possibly squeeze one more in there, Jamie. We just have a hard stop in 4 minutes.
The second part of the question about the union being on the front lines of protecting civilians was, would you be willing to instigate or initiate or endorse a day of action? Not necessarily civil disobedience, but civil action. And I think that Mike Fox has something in the works, and this is my question to begin with, and I see that Mike is asking the same thing. So Mike, do you want to jump in here if you have a second? Is your mic working?
Real quick, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Number one, panelists, you rock. Thank you so much. I've learned so much here. The question is in regards to the nationwide effort that is going to be taking place on, I believe, yeah, it's the 13th through the 17th, but they're really pushing hard on a national day of action on the 17th. There is support, a huge coalition that includes CWA and SEIU and all the solid lefty organizations out there. And I would reinforce, especially for my union organizers, that this is totally nonpartisan. The message is everybody, has to be able to vote. So your Republican members should be on board with this as well. We want their vote to count. So long story short, I'll toss into the chat once again the link for folks to either create their own event or join another one. And I would just like to hear if any of our speakers would be in solidarity with that.
Well, we're definitely in solidarity with that, because you know what you know, Republican legislators that passed these voter, you know, I call them voter disruption bills, they're disrupting both sides. It's equal opportunity law. You're restricting people on both sides' rights to vote in many ways. A lot of the bills are like, you know, aimed at getting people. You can't get certain people without getting everybody. And so, oh yeah, you know, a day of action, you know, that comes with the territory when you deal with us. You know, we don't have a problem supporting a day of action if it's going to mean for the betterment of everybody, especially in voting and labor.
Great, thank you. Anybody want to put a last word in? Not questions, I'm talking from the panel.
Victoria has a question.
Who have a question?
Victoria and Deb.
Well, please let it be a question, because we do need the speakers to close, because I know Labor Day coming up and would like for them to mention their events, that if they having anything, a question, not a statement, and a question, one or the other. Thanks.
Go ahead, Victoria, and then Deborah, and then we'll let the panel close out.
My question, because we have so many labor leaders here from different unions. My union, IATSE Local 500, with the entertainment union. Is anybody else having members coming up with fake COVID papers? Is anybody else having this problem, or is it just our union? These idiots are not getting vaccinated, but they're buying their vaccination card online. And we work with entertainers. If we get somebody sick, we're dead.
So is that the question?
That is the question. Is anybody else having members that are showing up with fake cards?
Can we get a yes or no, please?
No.
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 Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's our problem.
Deborah?
I just wanted to, on behalf of the Jeff and the South Florida AFL-CIO, welcome you to our Labor Day picnic on Monday that the South Florida AFL-CIO is collaborating with State Rep Kevin Chambliss. Lorenzo, I will send you the flyer, and we hope you all can come to our Labor Day picnic. We are also doing a press conference at the IBEW in the morning at 11 o'clock with a lot of elected officials and some workers to thank our essential workers who have been doing an exceptional job, you know, this pandemic, and especially now when we're in the heat of our pandemic. So Jeff, thank you. And Lorenzo, I'll send you all this information.
Okay, and I will pass it by.
All right. Thank you, Deb.
All right, who wants to close the speakers, and then we turn it over to Lorenzo so he could have his closing.
How about Tom?
Tom?
Tom brought us in. Tom, want to bring us out?
Tom, we want you.
Where?
Maybe not Tom.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I like to close out by saying that, you know, Monday will be Labor Day. Labor Day isn't just for people in organized labor. It's for everybody that's been struggling the past year or so trying to make ends meet. It's for everybody that contributes to our great society. And let's not forget everybody. This week alone, I've lost 5 coworkers to COVID. One today at about 4 o'clock. I've had 500 bus operators out sick with COVID-19. One is in intensive care right now. All they did was come to work. And let's think about people like them. Let's think about our teachers in the classroom trying to provide a decent education for our kids, and all they're asking for is for the parents to send their kids to school, you know, safely. Wearing a mask is the smallest thing that we can do to look out for our neighbor. I encourage everyone, if you haven't gotten vaccinated, and if you can, to do so. I'm in line right now for my booster shot. And I encourage everyone to take advantage in helping get America healed, Florida healed, and more specifically here in South Florida. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Curtis?
Yes, I want to thank y'all for inviting me to participate in this panel. I think we have a really wonderful community on here of activist leaders, union leaders, and I think this is the type of community we're going to have to really hunker down, like Brother Jeffrey said, to see through the end of this pandemic. And then politically, I think ensuring that we stand united in defending each other across all our issues, right? Labor, voting rights, the environment. And I think if we're able to continue to have these conversations with an even broader audience and do the tough conversations in the organizing, I think our state, Florida, is going to come out the other end of this horrible pandemic and some of the awful political leadership we've seen. So thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Mr. Bill?
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all gathering. I appreciate everything that you do. You can't do this by yourself. We need everyone to do whatever small part they can so that we can accomplish for the good of the whole. And, you know, there's plenty of people out there who are only in it for the good of some, but not the whole. And we're in it for everybody. So I appreciate you guys and everything that you do to help make that happen. You know, the general welfare of the United States is one of the citizens of the United States is one of the responsibilities that's outlined to our elected officials who take the oath of office in the preamble of the Constitution. We were always ruled by our official papers, and we need to educate our people on the United States Constitution and what it says and what it actually means. And the clearer we're able to educate that to our individual members and to our families and to all of our fellow Americans, then the easier it will be for us to form a more perfect union as we were instructed so long ago to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tony White?
Well, Brother Sauers kind of wrapped it up specifically when he said for the good of the whole. As most of you know, in education, you know, we deal with our community's children, your children, my children, our neighbors' children. And right now we're in some very precarious times. You know, politics has crept its way into education in a way like never before. Those of us that are adults in the field of education, we understand politics. But when politics start to affect the well-being and safety of our children, that's a totally different situation in itself. And that's what we're really fighting right now. We're fighting a governor and an education commissioner who has kind of lost sight of the true value of this country, which has always been our children. Our children have always been the most sacred asset that we always have. And they're putting these children in harm's way with these reckless decisions and these do as I say, not as I do mentality type things. So hopefully, you know, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. You know, we're in a position now that the The pandemic is worse today than it was when it initially started. Our education professionals are now fully 100% in buildings, where last year we were only at about 40-45% capacity. It's not a question of whether or not we're going to have outbreaks and contagion. The question is when, because schools were not built for social distancing. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to have multi-layers of mitigation factors, with masks being one of them, and the opposition chose to turn that into a political statement. But we're going to stand strong. We're going to keep doing what we do. You know, Teachers Day, we have a strength and we have a weakness at the same time. Irregardless of what they seem to try to do to us, once we close those doors, it's all about what it should be about, and that's the education of our children. So I think everybody who is gearing up for this next political fight, you know, we don't choose to be political, but we have no options at this point, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and we need to get off the menu for a change. We need to get back to educating people and educating our children to the best of our abilities, and we can only do that if we begin to elect the right people, because what they're attempting to do with public education now is unheard of. When you privatize education, then we know it's not education for all, and that's one thing that public education provides: an opportunity for everybody, no matter what race, color, creed, religion, or zip code. So I think everybody who joins in that fight continues that fight, and I look forward to moving forward in that fight. Thank you.
All right, and I'm going to turn it over to to Lorenzo, but I want you all to also remember, at the school system, we have our bus drivers, we have our custodians, we have our security people, also at the hospital. So please, 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 as Jeff Mitchell stated, and I'm going to send a flyer to Lorenzo, the city of North Miami Beach. Tomorrow and Saturday is doing vaccination and also boosters. So if you already had the 2 shots, they're doing it. No ID. I mean, so they want people to get, so I'm going to forward it to Lorenzo. He'll send it out. So it's tomorrow and Saturday. So if anyone out there, just share the information. Hopefully they will go. But if you had your 2 shots and you haven't had it, then you could go and get the booster shot. So, because I had COVID, and thank goodness I had my shot. I had no symptoms, no nothing. So I'm like really keeping my social distance. So I'm just saying, it really, really help you, especially if you're in good health. So go ahead, Lorenzo.
Thank you. I feel sorry for the people that didn't see this, participate in this event tonight, because I think it was an incredibly high quality event. We need to continue doing this from time to time, because basically the people that were here tonight got a thorough education on what is out there that's happening, and that we have the forces to win this battle if we are focused and keep our eyes on the prize, as somebody once said. One of the things that I believe that was said here tonight that I think is extremely important to put in the back of our minds is that we are under a labor-friendly administration. And if we are under labor-friendly administration, we need to take advantage of all that we can in order to be able to get things through. And we can do that if we play our role as part. I think Jeff Mitchell mentioned about the fact that how people in our opposition to us get scared when we intermingle with the community. That's why they have laws for prohibit labor to communicate. We have to do other things in order to be able to communicate with the community. But it's very important that each one of us get involved in the community, and that And as Bill Sauers mentioned, people need to know that we are involved in things supporting the community. They need to know. They need to feel that in LCA we have the phrase that says labor issues are community issues and community issues are labor issues. Let's apply that, because that is a reality. That is a reality. We need to deal with the misinformation machinery. We need to create the sources to be able to counterpoint those and we need to take them at their roots. We have to be awake and take and fight these people from the get-go. We cannot allow those misinformation to take hold of people. And I was very encouraged by what Tony White. I come from the same union. That was my union in Pennsylvania, the National Education Association. Very encouraged by what he said about 83% of the people in the union vote. I mean, and it's true. In a way, we shouldn't even care how they vote. But we certainly, knowing that our life is on the line here, we need to encourage people and educate people to vote in the proper manner. But we need to get people actively involved. And as people mentioned, I think Tony White did, was the fact that January 6th was a wake-up call. January 6th, if we don't understand what happened in January 6th, we have a problem, because basically we were minutes away from losing our democracy. Just imagine what would have happened if those people had gotten in control of Nancy Pelosi or in control of all those votes. What would have happened? So we need to at the same time that we are encouraging everybody to participate, we need to also focus people on the reality of what is the deal. And remember that we are under a labor-friendly administration, and point that out. And just to conclude, thank you very much for your participation. I believe this was a fantastic forum. We need to repeat this again, because as we can see, we went 15 minutes beyond the time, and we could have been here for a couple of hours more. And no, I know that with Janice and on the road, that is not going to happen. But and God bless Janice. But what this means is that we need to continue the exchanges. And so, thank you very much for all of you that part of the forum, and thank you very much for all the people that attended what I thought was a wonderful